We are going to do some a little more complex beads this week. The first one I'm going to do is what I call a citrus bead because it looks an awful lot like the inside of a lemon or a lime or even a tomato when it's all done. Now I've already preconditioned the clay and rolled out two flat pieces of clay, and I'm basically right now what I'm going to do is trim them to where they're the same size. Now you can use a ruler for this. I don't generally bother with a ruler, but if you're more happy with the control, you can use the sides of the ruler to get your two pieces about the same size. And now I'm going to have to decide whether I want blue on the outside or purple on the outside. And I think I'm going to go with purple or blue on the outside. So I'm going to lay that on the bottom. And then I'm going to lay the purple on top. I've also rolled two snakes, one of navy and one of yellow. And I'm going to cut the yellow snake into 3 pieces. And I need to have the 3 pieces as wide as my base, so I'm going to have to make this just a little bit narrower in order to have the right amount of clay. And that looks pretty close. So I'll just measure using this. I had that wrong. Try again. We'll re-roll. And here I thought I was going to save time by having all this stuff done ahead of time. So I'm reconditioning. I'm pushing it together, get out any air bubbles that might be in there. And then I'm rolling it out. And again, as I roll, I tend to put a little more force on my index finger, and I move that index finger down the line and then come back up, and as I come back up, it continues to get longer and longer and longer. And of course we want to have about the same diameter. That's going to be pretty close. So we'll cut this into 3s. Can you tell my desktop is just a little bit slanted? And then I'm going to make the navy the same diameter as the yellow. And we're going to need 2 of these. And they need to be the same length as the yellow. And I'll set the scraps aside here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start out with one of the yellows, and I'm going to kind of nestle it in by wrapping around the 2 flat layers around it like this. And then I'm going to turn it over and put a navy snake in, and I'm going to fold that up so the navy snake is folded around. Then I'm going to put another yellow snake in and fold it back over the other way. And then another navy snake. And I'm going to have to back off just a little bit. We're running a little bit short, so I'm going to stretch these out a little bit. And then refold. And I'm just That'll work out much better. And then I'll fold that last yellow in. And basically, what we've got is an in and out fold of the yellow and the blue. Now I am going to push this together and I'm going to we're trying to get rid of all the air bubbles, of course. We're trying to make sure that the blue is all the way on the outside of everything. And I'm trying to make it into roughly a triangular shape. And you see I've got a little problem. I've got some purple sticking out and I need it to be blue. So I'm going to use these scraps that we made, or that we have earlier, and I'm going to put them over. I'm going to smooth them and stretch them to where I hide all that purple. Now you caught me at being just a little bit lazy. I should have measured this all out ahead of time, but I didn't. And you know, there's going to be times when you do the same thing and it's not going to work out just the way you want it to. So don't be afraid to improvise and fix things as you go. And what I want to do is make this roughly into a triangle. And unfortunately, the way that's easiest for me to squeeze into a triangle is not the way that it's easiest for you to see it on the camera. Actually, it's not a camera. I'm just recording from my computer screen. So we're at a disadvantage. I can't put it exactly the way it needs to be. So we now have a triangle. And notice the three yellow snakes are kind of on the bottom and the two blue snakes are kind of on the top. And we're going to continue to push and stretch. We want this to be fairly long. So as I push in, I'm also pulling out. Now if you have a brayer, which is a roller with a handle on it, you could use a brayer to stretch and pull. And you're going to have to stretch this out where you're going to be able to get 4 pieces out of it, because this triangle is 1/4 of a square. Okay, and it's pretty even from one side to the other. And as I continue to push and stretch, I try to keep these nice, sharp, even edges. And we're going to cut it into 4s. But all this stuff on the end, I'm going to cut off even. And you see, we're beginning to get our pattern already. And then I'll just cut in half and in half again. And I am using the blade because I don't want to destroy this pattern that we are making in the middle. If I would use the scraper, it would blur the colors in together. And now I am going to take and put these together. Again, I'm going to keep the yellow sides out. And I see I didn't get my triangle at quite the right angle. So I'm going to be pushing these all into the center. Until they make either a square or a circle. And I'm going to go ahead and make mine into a circle because it's easier to reduce. Now what we've made here is a cane, and it's easier to reduce a cane that is a circle or a round shape than it is to reduce a square cane. So I'll keep squeezing this, and I'm going to try and squeeze from the center out to get the air bubbles out from where we put those together. And you notice as I squeeze from the inside out, the ends bump over and get longer. Just had my alarm come off. I hope that didn't show on your screen, or I'll have to re-record all of this. Anyways, that's a good thing, having it bump out this way. When the edges come out farther than the centers, then you've got a bit of a problem that your pattern won't be the same all the way through. And I just continue to squeeze from the center out. And then when I get it about the size that I want it, I'm going to take it down and roll it as a snake. Now you'll see as I start rolling it as a snake, I'm rolling the outsides more than the insides, and we're going to lose some of that bulge. Now this looks like a good size. It's about a 1/2 inch. I'm going to take my blade, and I'm going to, now you can see right here, some of our blue doesn't cover the rest of it. So I'm going to cut that off as scrap. And when you clay, you will have a lot of scrap material. And here's the end of it. This is what the inside looks like. And you can see it is kind of looks like the inside of some kind of fruit. Now we can slice these out at 3/8 of an inch or so. And we may have to, well, I didn't slice that very well. Didn't go all the way through, so I have to finish my slice. And sometimes if you don't let your clay rest, and I didn't let my clay rest, it's really pliable and it goes out of circle. So I just go ahead and futz with that just a little bit until it is back in my circles. You know, because, well, and you can make these in any shape if you wanted to. You can squash them into ovals or back into squares. And we have what we could consider a disc bead. And because they're fairly large disc beads, I'm going to go ahead and pierce a hole in these with a bamboo skewer. And you can get 100 of these in the grocery store for just a little bit of nothing. And remember, you want to twist and push at the same time, first from one side and then the other. And you're going to want to look very closely and make sure that you didn't get any cracks in your pattern, because sometimes if you haven't pushed in enough, if you haven't squashed all the air out of it or squashed it enough to where it'll bond with the other clay, you'll get that breaking it apart, and then you need to know you have to squash it in some more. Another thing we could do with it is cover other beads. And I've got a little rope of green here for my next project, so I'll make a bead out of it. And we'll make a circular bead. And then I'm going to cut the slices as thin as I can make them. And that, of course, will depend on your skill. The better you get at this, the thinner you'll be able to make your slices. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this bead and we're going to cover it. We're going to lay those slices over the top of it. Now you could cover things other than beads. You could cover mint tins. You could cover paper mache boxes or shapes. I understand that if you take the middle out of a clear Bic pen, or if you take the ink out of a clear Bic pen, you can bake that in the oven and not have it melt. But I think I'd try without clay around it first. Anyways, now that I've got it covered, I'm pressing and rolling to get any seams to meld into the pieces beside it, so we don't have any obvious cracks or in the seams, but we have this really interesting bead that you couldn't make any other way. So remember, we can either make disc beads or we can cover scrap beads with this citrus pattern. Now we're going to make what I saw originally as a Natasha bead, presumably after the woman that first thought of it, but which I call an inside-out bead. Now, I said we collect a lot of scraps, and we do have a lot of scraps. And basically, we're going to cut these scraps into small pieces. Now, if you have leftover canes you want to get rid of, why, you can use those and maybe put 2 or 3 canes, roll them out as logs, and twist them together. And you notice some of the scraps I cut parallel to the length of the scrap. These I'm going to cut crosswise to it. I'm just going to break these up into different pieces. Now, the size of your piece that you cut these into will determine the delicacy of the pattern of this inside-out bead. And basically what we're going to end up with is bead that is 4-sided bead that is symmetrically mirrored on each side. So we'll just scrunch these all up and kind of shake them around our hands to make it random. And then I'm squashing them together. And I want to make out of this a rectangle. And I'm going to push. And as I'm pushing with my right hand here, I'm pulling a little with my left hand, which makes this get longer. Now here's the trick to this bead. We have to twist this around completely a minimum of 3 times to get our pattern. So we start here and we put this back up on the top. That's once. Here's the top. I twist that till it's back up on the top. That's twice. Now I'm going to go back to this other end. Here's the top. Turn it all the way around till it's back up on the top. And I'm going to push this to where it's just a little bit thicker. I'm going to twist those ends just a little bit farther because I want to make sure that they have a pattern in at the ends too. And again, I'm going to try and make this into a square shape. And again, if you have a brayer, you could be using a brayer. I forgot to bring mine over near the camera, so hang on just a moment while I go get it. There we go. Now we have a brayer. Make my life a lot easier, maybe not yours. But anyways, we just run the brayer along the top of this. And I don't want it to be a whole lot longer, so I'm going to keep pushing it back towards the center. But I do want all of those twists to be pushed out or polished out, or however you want to say it. And that's where the brayer comes in. It helps get those twists. And you notice I turned it end for end. I don't know why, but it seems like if I bray from one direction, oh, that sounds bad, like I'm a donkey or something. If I roll it from one direction, it seems to get thicker on one end and thinner on the other, and I don't know what the problem is, and I haven't figured out whether it's just an inherent quality of the brayer in this clay, or it's just the way I do it. Now what we want when we're all done is a square that's equal on all four sides, at both ends, equal on all four sides. I'm going to trim the ends square. And I think I'm going to cut this into 3 pieces. So we'll get 3 beads out of this one. I'm going to set 2 of the beads aside for a minute. Actually, I'm going to work on the center one for you. And I'm going to check each bead now. You see this one is a little bit longer on one side than the other. So I'm going to have to squish this back into an absolute square on both ends for it to work well. Alright. Now I am going to cut it in half lengthwise. And I want to make sure that the blade, or the edge of my tissue blade, is real clean. And I don't want it to push, I want it to cut. And I'm sorry that I'm actually getting my fingers in the way of what you can see, but I like to make sure that I don't lose it, and I want to be right on top of it so I know that I'm exactly in the middle. And I'm going to cut down, and then I'm going to open it up like a book. And let me move this brayer out of your way, maybe you can see a little better. And I'll try to move this up to where you can see better. So I've got it opened up like a book. And now I'm going to cut each of these book sides in half. And I'm going to take this first one and I'm going to open it up like a book. And you can see our first symmetrical pattern. And then I'm going to take the other one and open it up like a book. And we see our second symmetrical pattern. Now I'm going to take these two and put them together, and I'm going to match up the sides so we get our third symmetrical pattern. And I'm going to have to wiggle around just a little bit to make sure they match up. And our fourth symmetrical pattern. So now we're going to push and squeeze these a little bit because we want this clay of the 4 pieces to adhere to each other. And we really don't want to see where we cut. Now I've found that on 3 sides I can get a gorgeous match, and you won't know that there's been any cuts at all, but I have a little trouble on the 4th side. And I've tried a dozen different ways to get around it, and I still have a little bit of problem. But here we have a, whoops, get this back here where you can see it, a bead where each side is a symmetrical pattern. And basically what we've done is we've turned this bead inside out. Let's do it again. Again, we want to check and make sure that the bead is square. Because if it's not square, you're definitely going to have a hard time putting it back together. And again, just a little manipulation with your fingers will help you do that. And this time, I'm going to try to cut from the top to avoid that extra seam that doesn't quite help myself. So I'll cut from the top down to the middle. And top down to the middle. And I didn't do a very good job on that. These aren't all the same size as at all. So basically what I'm going to do is open the 2 halves up like a book. Okay, now I'm going to open this one up like a book, and this one up like a book. And then we need to match that pattern on that 4th side. Now the reason I've had so much trouble with this is that I didn't have it close enough to me to see what was going on. I had it closer to you. But when we're done, we still need to push and meld those edges together. And now it is a little thinner because I had to push to make those edges not show. But again, 4 symmetrical edges. And they're about the same size. And let's cut this other one the same way as the first one. And again, we want to make sure that it's square on all sides. And this time I'm going to hold it over here towards me where I can see what's going on, and I can look directly down on my blade as I make the cut. Now, this time I've just used my blade to knock over and fold it like a book. And then we unfold the second, cut like a book. We'll unfold the first, cut like a book. And then we'll match these sides up together. Oh, this one's going to make a nice little face. It's got eyes in it. Oh, and this side has an apple with a face. Anyways, we're going to push to meld that clay to each other, to itself, so we can't see where any of our folds were made. And here's the apple with a face in it. A symmetrical side. This one looks a little bit like a face. You can see all sorts of things in these symmetrical patterns, but it's really very neat. Now that we've got them all done, we're going to take our brayer and carefully roll the brayer over each of the 4 sides, and we're going to try and get these basically as much the same size and shape as we can. Now you see I gave up with all of them together because I was getting some unevenness. Now you can, if you wish, at this point, if you don't want a square bead, you can push in the edges like this and do a little bit of rounding out. I think it destroys or makes your symmetrical pattern less obvious, but it is still a very interesting bead. Now we'll trim these ends off even, because every time we manipulate it, clay squishes out one side or the other. And we're going to use a bamboo skewer on these because these are the bigger beads, and push and shove from one side, and then push and twirl. I shouldn't say push and shove, push and twirl until we get through to the other side. And you could put these right on the skewer and bake them. And even with the square ones, we're going to even up the edges and then pierce our holes. Now, if you wanted to make game pieces, suppose you wanted little blocks of some sort of game piece, fancy die if you wish, you could cut them like that, or you could make them smaller for just bead purposes. Now, I made these deliberately big because I thought it would show better on camera. But if you want to start with a smaller square snake to begin with, your beads, of course, will be smaller. You can't do much reducing after you've turned it inside out, but you can do a lot of reducing before you turn it inside out. So, you know, it's the size of the bead that you want to end up with is pretty much where you stop reducing your cane. I made a bunch of these the other week for a fellow who had a stroke, and he was having trouble learning how to use his fingers again. So I made them in various sizes, from big to tiny, and put them in a jar, and he dumps them out and picks up the big ones and then the smaller ones, and when he can pick them up, all of them, he'll graduate to picking up coins, which was what he was having trouble with. Now you see I still have scrap clay left over. What do? I twist it 2 or 3 times. Make it into my rectangle. And this is just going to be a rough one because this is already run on long enough. I'm going to go ahead and cut it. Now, if you wanted to leave it like this, you could pin or glue a pin back to it and use it as a pin, or cut a circle out of it, or a couple of circles out of it, use it for earrings. But you can always get some really interesting effects with this inside out bead, and it's an excellent way to use up scrap clay. Hi. This time we're going to do a 3-dimensional project. And what we're going to do is a rose. And I've made a snake here of red, which is the typical rose color. And I am going to mark that off into increments, again about the same distance as the snake is in diameter. And I just press that on there. And maybe the marks on this will show up better than the pink ones did yesterday. Anyways, I'm going to slice this along the lines. I want at least 8 pieces, I think. 7 or 8. I think that's, looks like that's 7. If that's not enough, I'll cut another one. And I'm going to make these into balls, or spheres if you would prefer the more correct term. Just like we're making beads out of them. And the one thing about red clay is that it stains. So you want to use, if you're using a series of colors, you want to use red last, because if you don't, it'll stain your worktop, it'll stain your hands, it will stain your pasta machine. Red's a lovely color, but in polymer clay it's quite a stainer. And when I get these, I'm going to start flattening them. And I want to flatten one side more than the other. Matter of fact, I want one side pretty thin, because these, after all, are rose petals. Oh, that didn't work too well. It stuck right to the... I'll have to do this one over. It stuck right to the workplace. Trying it in a different place. And I'll pick it up and turn it over, and anyways, I want the one side quite thin. Much better. Now I want to take this and I'm going to roll this thin edge over my index finger like this. So we get a nice curl. Trying to see there. I don't know if you can see the curl there or not. So we get a nice curl. And the first piece I'm going to roll into a tube. And after I roll it, I'm going to splay those edges out just a little bit more, and I'm going to carefully put it down. And probably what I should have done was get all these folded flat before we started. So I'm going to take a quick break and do that and be back with you. Well, I want to tell you, I ended up using an index card to squash these. I don't generally work on a cutting mat. I generally work on a slab of marble. But my marble slab wouldn't come over here to the computer, so I ended up putting a cutting board down, and it just isn't working very well because it's sticking to it. So I start on this index card, and then I finish with my fingers to get the edges as small as I can. And I'm going to, they're all slightly different sizes, so I'm going to start with one that's relatively small. I'm going to roll this edge around my index finger, and then I'm going to pick up the tube that I made earlier. I'm going to start rolling this petal around the tube. And again, as I go, I'm going to push these petals down. And I want to overlap my petals. And again, keep them rolled out. And we're trying to get it so no two petals end and start at the same place. So I'm kind of putting the petals now between the petals that I made at the other round. And again, just keep rolling them out. And the farther you go, the deeper you want them to roll. So now we have our rose shape. Now there's two things we could do with this at this point. We could make this a pot sticker. We could, in other words, put it on a stick, like a bamboo skewer, and then we could put it in the potted plants around the house. Or we could cut it off and make it flat, like, and then put a pin back on it, or a tie tack or something like that. I'm going to continue to leave this three-dimensional, so I'm going to work here on the bottom a little bit and kind of push the edges together to where it's roughly rose-shaped. Now I might at this minute, boy, I don't know, it looks pretty good. I don't think I'm going to mess with it. I'm going to take this green and I'm going to cut 3 slices of the green. We're going to make sepals at the bottom of this because, you know, if we're going to bother with a rose, we might as well make it look as realistic as we can. And this time I'm going to roll an oval out of it rather than a round. And I'm going to, again, smush this down. And as I smush it, I want to point this one end. Now here I'll work over the index cards so maybe you can see what I'm doing. And I want those edges to be quite thin, especially up near the pointy end. So I'm going to pinch them with my fingers. And here we have roughly a leaf shape, and I'm going to use the point of this bamboo skewer to draw a vein in it. And then I'm going to fasten it carefully. Try not to mush any of my petals up to that rose. And again, it's okay if we have it flared out a little bit. And I'm going to do the same thing with the other two. Squash it pointed, make it leaf shaped. Now I have found in some craft shops clay cutters, and they have a nice little leaf shaped clay cutter. They have a heart shaped clay cutter. They have I've got ovals, I've got stars, I've got circles, just teeny weeny cookie cutters is basically what they are. They're nice sometimes, but they are an expense, and maybe one that you don't want to mess with at this time. So, you know, it's one of those things where you go with the flow and you make do with how much you want to spend, how much you want to get into it. Because even the clay itself is relatively expensive. Last time I bought some, well, I got some on sale at $2 for a 2-ounce package. So it's about $1 an ounce, and that was on sale. Now I'm spacing these evenly along the bottom of the flower. And again, the difficult part of this is to be able to put it together without destroying the leaves that or the rows that you've already made. And I want to pull these out, roll them out. I'm going to re-roll some of the petals that we made. And then I'm going to stick the dull end. Well, actually, I'm going to start the hole with the sharp end of that bamboo skewer. And then I'm going to put the dull end in. And then I need to bake this. What I might do, because you don't want to lay it on its side to bake, I might poke a hole in an index card. Let me see if I can't find my awl right quickly. Poke a hole in the index card. And then put this in the oven like this. And have the, excuse me, put this in the oven like this where you can actually see it. Like this. And put this skewer down through the rack of the oven, and then the bamboo card will hold it on the rack of the oven. Now this is at least a ½ inch down here thick, and thicker than that up here, 3/4 of an inch up here. Now remember, we want about 20 minutes of cooking time for each 1/4 of an inch. So we're going to need this to cook between 40 and 60 minutes. I'd probably set it for 45, and then at the end of the 45 minutes I would turn off the oven and let it cool in the oven, so we'll get more baking time, so it will cure completely. If it doesn't cure completely, it'll be crumbly, and if you cook it too much, it'll burn. So cooking times will vary with your oven. Sculpey 3, which is this kind of clay that I'm using, says 275 for every 20 minutes for every 1/4 inch of thickness. Ovens vary, so it's something that you're going to have to experiment with. Test your things when they come out. If they're crumbly, put them back in. Test 1 bead or 1 rose, and if it crumbles, put it back in for another 10 minutes or so at temperature. Now remember to preheat your oven, and of course, like I say many times, I'll turn my oven off and let the oven cool with beads in it. So anyways, there was our third fun thing for today, a little rose. Thank you so much.